Um, so today I'm here with Brooke Zumas, who's the head of Sanction PA. And we're going to talk about everything women's wrestling in Pennsylvania. So what is,
Anna? I'm excited to be on.
No problem. So what is Sanction PA?
So Sanction PA is a nonprofit organization and really kind of a grassroots movement with the purpose of growing participation opportunities for girls in the sport of wrestling. And so we do a lot of different activities towards that end. So we do a lot of education with coaches and schools and parents. We make a lot of materials and support the competitions that can take place while the PIAA is working on sanctioning. We also just help schools develop girls' teams. So doing things like forming templates for them and going through that process with them. And then we also actually act as a liaison with the PIAA and schools. So we are communicating with both sides and are kind of like the point organization for the PIAA in this process. So yeah, in a nutshell, that is Sanction PA.
That's really cool. And we're really close to sanctioning PA as well.
We're really
up to 97 programs, I think I saw today.
Yep, and stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Very close. Happening any day now. So once PA is sanctioned, so once we had 100 programs, will we be sanctioned? Is that like official? Or?
So that is a really, really good question. I think it's one that a lot of people are going to ask. So the moment that we hit 100 schools, we are not automatically sanctioned. Once we hit 100 schools, essentially what that means is we are now eligible to be voted on for sponsorship by the PIAA board of directors. So someone could, at that next PIAA board meeting, make a motion for girls wrestling to be a fully sponsored sport. So again, the moment it reaches 100, it's not an automatic process, but it does make us eligible for that vote.
And so like what other struggles might we like come up after we hit 100 programs?
So immediately when we hit 100, again, we're going to relay that information to the PIAA. I don't envision too many hurdles between that moment of reaching 100 and actually getting to that sanctioning vote. And I don't think that we're going to hit any, partly because of the emerging sport program. So girls wrestling was approved as an emerging sport back in February of last year, February 2022. And that really was a big hurdle that maybe wasn't fully understood by everyone at the time, you know, in that way. But ultimately, by accepting that proposal for girls wrestling and saying, yes, we're approving you as an emerging sport, really it was affirming that girls wrestling is operating in a manner consistent with a sport that the PIAA would sponsor. So meaning in terms of rules and officials and competition availability. So if there were issues with the core of the proposal, you know, core of the idea of girls wrestling being a sponsored sport, that really would have been the time to vet them. So when we passed that hurdle, now I really think we're more on a fast track. And so I think once we reach that, it should be a pretty clear pathway to that sanctioning vote.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like what would postseason look like? Because right now in Pennsylvania, there is really only states, there's no qualifiers, everyone qualifies.
Right.
And so will there be district region states like this for boys?
So, well, first, I'll say this year, because this is another misconception. So no matter when we'd hit 100 and no matter when they'd vote, we would not see a different postseason for this season. So everyone should mentally prepare that they're still coming to, you know, our scheduled regionals on March 5th, which are now actually, we are using them as a qualifier this year to get to states because we have so many girls, which is in one sense a good problem to have, but essentially having states as a giant open tournament was not going to be possible anymore. So they do have to place at their regional. But that's for this year. So no matter when we hit 100, no matter when the PIAA votes, this postseason will remain the same. Once we go into the first season of the sport being sponsored, your question is a great one. And honestly, it's one we probably don't have a really specific answer to for a little while longer. I think, well, I know, I mean, in confidence, we certainly will have a state tournament for girls. I think, if you think about it like a funnel though, so, states is going to be at the end, right? And we will definitely have that because that's the PIAA offering a state championship for girls. And that's what we've been working towards. So that will be there. But then I think that those remaining pieces of that funnel, in other words, those other qualifying tournaments, like how many will be required to funnel down the number of girls to feed the state tournament? That's really the question. And every state across the country, is different with the number of classes that they have, like we have AA and AAA and the bracket sizes. But say that we have 13 weight classes, we do one class of girls, so we don't separate them to AA and AAA, and say we have a 20-person bracket. So the question then becomes, how many qualifying tournaments would be necessary to narrow down that whole field of girls to that number that will compete at states? And I think that's really what will be analyzed and is being analyzed right now. If districts aren't needed, then they aren't needed. And it's theoretically possible that maybe there will be regionals in certain areas and not districts at first until the numbers grow. So eventually, though, the thought and hope would be that every PIAA district would have districts because we'll have as many girls competing as the boys, right? But if we don't at first, the question's really going to be for next year, how many regionals will be needed? And will any districts be needed and how many? And I don't think that question is answered yet, but I'm sure it is one that is being worked on. And when the PIAA rolls out sanctioning, that's going to be part of the plan and the announcement. They're going to be building that infrastructure. So certainly we can all be confident, yes, there's going to be a state championship and it's not going to be an open tournament. So certainly there will be regionals. But I think figuring out the details of how many and will there be districts at first, again, those remain unanswered questions that it's going to be exciting to get the answer to.
And that could change too after we sanction Pennsylvania, because I don't know about you, but I expect like the sport to grow even more.
Well, right.
It sanctions, because then girls will feel like they can wrestle, and we'll see that.
Absolutely. I think we're going to see a lot of growth after sanctioning. And to your point, it's almost difficult to plan for next postseason because, on the boys' side, numbers are relatively consistent. And on the girls' side, even just from last year, we grew over 80%. So it's like, do you go with that growth prediction and assume it's going to grow by another 80% when you're trying to develop your postseason for next year? And I think every year we're going to see growth. So there's other fun questions that start coming into play as well. Like, what about the team dual championships like the boys have right now? At what point would we implement those for girls? And so those are decisions that are going to be on the PIAA's lap a bit, to have to figure out.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting question. I didn't think about team duels.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
go ahead.
I don't even think like right now a lot of schools are doing like team duels, like in dual meets, like because it's not sanctioned.
Right. So and more did them this year. And more will definitely do them, I think, next year once it's sanctioned. But yeah, to your point, it's, there's many teams where they're not even thinking in that mindset. So it'll be interesting, like how long they wait to roll those out.
Yeah. So like, what have you guys learned from watching states like New York sanction women's wrestling? And I believe that they had emerging sports status as well.
Yes, they did. So it's really interesting because I think the entire network of unsanctioned states is really connected in a way, because we're all fighting for the same thing. We're all fighting a battle that can be really unique state to state. But at the same time, everybody involved in these little battles, everybody that's advocating for sanctioning, they've worked for sanctioning, and they're so passionate. Everybody is working so hard. Like those emotions, the efforts that people are putting in, those are the same. And everybody doing this across the country is really fueled by the same fire, of wanting that outcome and wanting this growth and these opportunities for girls. But it is interesting how different some of the steps each state has to take can be, in order to get sanctioned. So in our committee, we are obviously tracking the national scene. And if there are incredible ideas out there that might help us, like, we are always open to that. So I think in some ways, we're all standing in solidarity. But ultimately, honestly, some of the resources that we need are naturally just a little bit different. So it's kind of the whole sanctioning piece. I think for any state that wants to get sanctioned, they need to find out, how does sanctioning work in their state? What are the requirements? And then build a pathway directly to that. And that pathway state to state does look a little bit different. And I know New York actually has a lot of similarities to us, and more so than some other states, but also some differences that might be catching them up on certain things that, places we didn't get caught, but also, vice versa. It's kind of just, it's different challenges, but again, all part of the same goal that we all have. So we're definitely rooting for them and hope that they get their state championship soon.
Yeah. And do you think Pennsylvania sanctioning women's wrestling will help the movement in New York and other states?
So yeah, and it's tough to say whether it's a direct connection, whether that, or, those individuals sitting at that state association office actually feel more pressure. I'd be curious what their response in that way would be. But I think certainly what does happen is, even among the wrestling community, as more states add, I really think it just continues to add momentum to everybody involved. When we see more states sanctioned, we all get excited. And I think it makes, that excitement feeds even coaches to be like, oh my gosh, girls wrestling really is here. Okay, I'm really going to put that announcement on the school station that I hadn't done before. And then suddenly more girls are out. It's all these little moments of momentum. And so I think anything can potentially help another state. Even the Olympics, I really think that built momentum for Pennsylvania, because so many coaches and administrators saw that, and it helps any little bit of opening people's, kind of eyes to what girls wrestling is a positive. So again, I'd be curious if there's going to be a direct connection with Pennsylvania's move towards sanctioning on New York, but I think, again, certainly in all of those grassroots circles, it's always a positive when we have more states join.
For sure. And what has it been like seeing that growth, the growth of women's wrestling in Pennsylvania, especially over the last couple of years? It's been crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's been, it's honestly been amazing. It's been kind of beyond anything I could have ever imagined, honestly. Everyone in this movement and in this community knows how incredible this sport is, right? You and I know how amazing wrestling is, and we know and believe it. And we knew this growth could happen and should happen and would happen, we knew that. So there was, I think, absolute fundamental confidence and belief that there would be growth and it would grow fast. But still, I think to actually see it has been truly remarkable, and to see that coach that wasn't at the tournament last year, but is there this year, because now, he's got a couple of girls on his team because he did put out that announcement. To see the girls at these tournaments, many of whom haven't even been in this sport last year, but now are always going to be a part of this community and always have their lives positively impacted by this sport. That's the real reward. And it's just remarkable and incredibly exciting to see it happen.
It is.
I think it's unique too, because I don't know that there's many things we do in life that have, some things, but sometimes, or, a lot of goals we set don't have a really tangible, or like concrete showing of progress. Like sometimes you'll be working on something and it's like, how do I know that this is making progress towards the goal? It's very hard to see, whereas this has been such a, concrete thing to be able to measure. Like there are more girls out. And I think that's also helped just celebrate little wins and keep the momentum going, because everyone can see it. Everyone can see that this growth is really happening. So I think that's really unique too, and has helped.
For sure. And I feel like it'll also help. Like, I know like some of the girls I've talked to, specifically, I just interviewed 2 girls who wrestle in my middle school, and they're the only 2 girls on our boys team. And they talked about how like even their own teammates don't see them as equal because they're female. And I feel like sanctioning women's wrestling would definitely help their teammates see them more as equal, because then maybe they'll realize that like this is a thing.
I agree. I think that simple act of sanctioning, that alone just legitimizes the sport in a certain way, where, again, everyone that has ever participated in this sport before the moment of sanctioning, they are wrestlers. Like they don't need sanctioning to be a wrestler. But I agree, from some outside eyes, I think it does lend more credibility for some people to see that, and it feels more official to people. So I hope you're right. I hope those teammates, give them the respect that they have deserved this whole time, but hopefully even before sanctioning though.
Yeah, hopefully so. I don't know if you saw this. This was really cool, but and today the boys states, like team state started, and 2 of the teams put girls out, and they wrestled in team states today. I forget who it was, but it was really, I thought that was really cool, and a really cool thing that they did to like show that they're still
a part of their team.
They're just as much a part of that team and getting to that, to team states as the boys were.
Yeah, I know. I thought Chris Haynes from Gettysburg took at least 1 girl a couple of years ago, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm sure he'll correct me, but I did think that he did that. So that's great. I think that's the right thing to do, right? If they're on your team, they are a part of your team 100%. So.
I don't think I have anything else. Okay.
Well, if anyone has any questions on sanctioning that I didn't answer, hopefully I didn't create any more confusion, but we do have some other information at sanctionpa.com. So I think you started a really important conversation on sanctioning and just like what is this process going to look like and what's going to come next. So we do have some information there now, but after it is, or as we approach sanctioning as well, and we get out of this season, we will also really do a massive educational push around sanctioning, because I think there are some pieces there that, we haven't been a sanctioned sport up until this point. So I think there's going to be a lot of questions out there. So we're hoping to really push a lot of material out, maybe even have some Zooms and things. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on that if you want to join or share with anybody.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for everything that you've done for women's wrestling in Pennsylvania.
Oh, of course. And thank you. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. I'll see you at States in a couple weeks or a few weeks.
Hopefully so. I have SATs the same day. So
No,
I'm gonna
at
try to
States?
go in the morning. I'm gonna try to go in the morning and
Oh
then
my
make it up.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
And I
Okay.
think I'm gonna go to Boise State. She said, I think I'm gonna go from Hershey, take my SATs, and then come back.
Oh my gosh. All right. Just make sure you get some sleep the couple nights before SATs.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, good luck with them. And then we'll see you Sunday, and we should celebrate that SATs are over as well. So,
Yep.
well, thank you, Anna. I appreciate it. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
You too. Bye.